Hi, everybody. My name is Max Keiser, or as Andrew Neal likes to call me, a shouty Yank. That's great. Thank you, Andrew. Oh, when's there a shouty Yank coming on again? People ask me why I'm interested in the NHS. The fact is, I moved here 18 months ago, and I'm registered with the NHS. It's a brilliant service. And I've come to appreciate the NHS and the people who work with the NHS. And when I had a chance to get involved with helping to fund this movie that's been circulating, NHS Sell-Off or Sell-Off of the NHS, directed by Peter Bach, we're very happy to get involved and to use my show to get people on this film and understanding this film and to see this film. And so I think that we need to step back and look at some of the parameters that we're talking about, so put this into context, what's happening with the NHS here in the UK. Before I started working in television, going back to the 80s, actually, we heard Thatcher's name mentioned a couple of times. We had our own Thatcher, Ronald Reagan. And during that period, I was a stockbroker on Wall Street. So I was very much a creation of Thatcherism, actually, at that time. And so I have an appreciation for what's going on here with the NHS. It's basically piñata economics. So you've got $100 billion worth of assets wrapped up in this thing called the NHS, and you've got a bunch of bankers and consultants with sticks that are whacking it to get at that candy. That's what's going on here. You can call it a leveraged buyout or corporate raiding. I mean, we see this all the time in the corporate space. Now we're seeing it in the public space as things like the Royal Mail, transportation, education, and the NHS are unlocked for those assets. And of course they use bankers' tricks like a leveraged buyout. So leveraged buyout, basically, the people that McKinsey works for, maybe the Blackstone Group or some private equity group on Wall Street or some HSBC banker when he's not snorting coke or laundering money for Mexican drug cartels or decapitating Mexicans, what they will see is a huge asset that they can pledge against a loan. So they don't have any money, but they know you've got money in your NHS because you've built it up for decades. So they pledge your NHS for a loan. Then they take that money that they borrowed, they raid the NHS, they break it up, they sell off the parts, pay back the loan, and keep the difference. So you're already being marked up right now as fodder for a loan and being sold to the highest bidder. Something that you've spent decades building up. But it's the same thing in the Royal Mail and transportation and education. And you're letting now. Back in the 2007-2008 financial crisis, which we covered pretty extensively, and one of the reasons I'm here in the UK, in London, is to cover the four major banks, HSBC, Barclays, Lloyds, Royal Bank of Scotland, the four horsemen of the financial apocalypse. And this is really ground zero for global financial fraud, is the City of London. So I'm a financial war reporter, and I report on what I call financial terrorism. Now, going back to the 2007-2008 period, when financial terrorism burst onto the scene, wielding what Warren Buffett called weapons of mass financial destruction. One of my friends created these are playing cards with all your favorite characters on them from the financial terrorists on Wall Street in the City of London. So you'll find Lloyd Blankfein from Goldman Sachs or Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan, and they're all on these handy playing cards, so you can keep track of all these terrorists. And of course, this is borrowed from the war in Iraq, when America, when it was looking for oil for Tony Blair in Iraq, they created a pack of playing cards with all the so-called terrorists of that era. And here we are 10 years later or so, and was it Blood for Oil? I think it was! Yeah, you're darn right it was. So what I'm thinking, it might be interesting, here's an idea for the NHS campaign, is create a pack of playing cards with all these financial terrorists so we can get their names out there. If you see them on the street, spit in their face. Obviously, right? Obviously, the ace of spades would be Jeremy Hunt, right? Anyone at McKinsey, KPMG, Deloitte and Touche, Ernst & Young, Tony Blair, of course, he's a classic. Of course, there he is, he's right there. So these are the, well, he's like Donald Rumsfeld. Listen, you can't visit lots of countries without fear of being arrested. You know, Donald Rumsfeld he's dropped in Paris, and immediately people are like, where is he going to arrest him? Tony Blair was the subject of the citizen's arrest recently. So these war criminals are, they're well known, but we need to expand this to this NHS system. Another thought that I had, another idea, was to create an app for your smartphone. And what you do is you crowdsource all the names and addresses of the folks at these big consulting firms. And you can have people that might know them, know their addresses, know their names. You put it into a central database. And then you load up this app. Anyone who are at the NHS who is on duty can upload this app on their phone. And anytime someone of these guys walks in to the NHS looking for maybe blood, you can just look them up on the phone, say, sorry mate, the price just tripled. Right? So this is, my point is that maybe the tactics need to change a little bit here. Because you're dealing with a group of folks for whom your life is not worth much. I'm sorry to say. But I think the human body, all the elements, if you were to sell them on the open market, the chemicals and elements are worth about $60. There's a thriving market in kidneys, I suppose. You can sell your kidney for $1,000 or $2,000. That's the way they look at you. Parts to be sold. And the NHS is not being defended. Nobody in this government is defending the NHS. They're throwing the keys to the worst of the worst. Charlatans, scumbags, financial terrorists, bankers, banksters, thieves, crooks, professional psychopaths. The results speak for themselves. People are dying because they don't have access to healthcare now because of what's going on. So I didn't want to spend a lot of time up here, but I did just want to go through this little exercise, which is just going through the daily papers. So on my way here, just going through the daily papers, the story tells itself. First of all, okay, here's today's paper. Here's a picture of Jeremy Hunt, the ace of spades. Who do you write for, darling?
Me.
Anyone from the press here? Okay, so here he is, Jeremy Hunt. And his quote is, to put a slight spin on what was previously said, but hospitals that harm patients will be forced to apologize. Well, what about the bankers? Why isn't the government saying, someone from the government, this is a cabinet minister, where's the apology for the LIBOR scandal, for the Forex scandal, for the energy market rigging? Again, I alluded to this multi-billion-dollar Mexican drug money laundering cartel sponsored by HSBC. Where's the apology? No, they get a bonus. Where's the apology when HSBC admitted, without any contention, that they're laundering money for Hezbollah? The government has Hezbollah on their list of terrorists. HSBC's, we would launder money for them, whatever, they seem like nice guys. What? So here you're caught laundering money for the full backing of this government for a group you claim to be terrorists, and HSBC had to pay a small fine. And the list goes on and on. So the bankers are of course, never called on the carpet. Just looking at today's news, because I think it brings things into perspective. I mean, where's the apology from the 6 major energy companies that have already privatized? Okay, you want to look at the ghost of Christmas future for the NHS. Look at the 6 major energy companies in this country. Completely non-competitive, completely price gouging, completely operating as an oligopoly, completely manipulating the government, who are then, according to today's paper, they're handing themselves a $7 million price hike without any review, any competition, huge bonuses. That's the future of the NHS. You're going to have a few oligopolists raising prices every single year. Quality of service will crash. That's what privatization is. But you see it right there. You already have an example. It's not about a theory that what might happen. We know what happens. Okay, how about the Royal Mail? Shares fall after the threat of industrial action. There was no need to privatize the Royal Mail. The Royal Mail did an absolutely fine service, The bankers made 100 something, I don't know the exact figure, but an enormous amount of cash by mispricing that deal. Some insiders got some stock, now the stock's crashing, predictably. Again, a complete waste, but a gift to the bankers in the city. This is just today's paper, mind you. I'm not going out of my way to dig up, dredge up things. This is just today's headlines. Here's another scandal, just from today. Financial shenanigans. According to the Bank of England, no interest rate rise until the autumn of 2015. Why aren't interest rates rising? This is the biggest hoax of all. The fact that you can keep interest rates low means that all of these privatization scams that are gutting the NHS cost nothing because they can borrow at 0. That's why interest rates are low. If there was a recovery, interest rates would be higher. They would be moving higher, but they're not because the government's sponsoring the privatization schemes with 0% loans, and they're pledging your assets for that loan to buy the NHS and then sell it off. Pensioners in Germany are going to be enjoying the income from your NHS for the next 20 or 30 years while your prices go higher. So, in closing, as an NHS registered member myself, I of course will try to showcase this struggle and fight on various media outlets to the best of my ability. We're trying to raise money for this film, which is a nice film. It's a very well-made film. Peter Bach has done an excellent job. And I would just, my message here tonight would be maybe to consider some additional tactics. Shaming tactics. More publicly shaming of these folks. They're not smooth, they're not funny, they're not clever. They're crooks, they're murderers. So they need to be publicly shamed in the most overt way possible. Because they're bullies. I think once you expose them as bullies, like all bullies, they fade away, don't they? When you confront the bully. But let's not pretend they have any economics on their side. They don't. They have no ideology on their side. They don't. They're just bullies. And they need to be taken down. Thank you.